Just a quick little bit of feedback before we get started. A friend of mine, a few people have emailed me about my opening conversation a couple nights ago and last night around what can white people do in the midst of this hashtag George Floyd disaster. And I've been getting great feedback from people. As I said, I'm a suburban boy originally, now in the city. A lot of my suburban friends have been saying, what do we do out here? There's no riots, there's no protesting, but we want to help. So somebody emailed me and said that they recently went to their gas station, and as they were paying, they mentioned, this is a really hard time, right? And the guy said the pandemic, he said that, and also the issue around police brutality. And the guy said, well, you reap what you sow, the guy behind the counter. And my friend said, well, wait a minute, did you know this guy, George Floyd? Do you know something I don't know? He said, no, but what's to know? He's a criminal. And then my friend basically said, well, they thought he passed a $20 bill. Either way, that's not worth taking someone's life. And the guy persisted. And so my friend said, you know what? I paid for my gas and realized I will not be buying my gas at this gas station anymore because the owner is not empathizing with what's going on. That is, what is going on? Our humanity, our sisterhood, our brotherhood. So I appreciate that from viewers. Send me feedback, galinskynow@gmail.com. Any kind of feedback at all. I really appreciate what my friend did. Didn't make a stink, didn't turn it into an issue or a big battle or an argument. Just calmly got their change, walked away, and made a personal decision not to shop at a place where humanity is not at the top of the charts. Well, what is at the top of the charts is, what is at the top of the charts is Capper pointing out that my hair is all electrified in this background. And I chose this background tonight because my guest went to prison facing 24 years sentence at the age of 16. And he got out, I think, in 10. And while he was there, though, he earned 3 degrees and started a program and basically started this educational program that has blossomed. You're going to hear more about it today. I want to shout out a couple more people when he gets here, but let's get him into the space right now. He's electrifying. I don't think his hair is going to do what my hair is doing. If not, please welcome Sean Pica. Hi, Sean.
Hey there. Honored to be on the show. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm honored you came. I'm so happy you're here. You told me earlier you made a coffee. You drink coffee late?
24 hours a day. It doesn't stop,
If I drink, this is water. If I drink coffee after 4 p.m., I'm up till 3 in the morning. It's nuts.
I love it. It's my vice. I drink it all day long.
So let's do a couple shout outs to some people in the chat rooms here. And then we'll get right into it. And Alexandra Pye is with us. Marcus Barr is with us. Bob Rising.
What?
Yeah. Callie Greenberg, Elizabeth Harder, Turko Ono, Jack Fuller, Andrew Galinsky, my brother. Capper's here. Barry Gecko Sakamano from Hawaii is with us. By the way,
what's up, guys?
Jack Fuller's a great guy. Yeah. Becky Savell is here. Tammy T, Rebecca Lucero. Everybody's psyched to hear what you and I got, what you got.
No pressure. No pressure.
Patrick Henn, Johnny Connors, John Walden, Alpheus Marcus, Mark Salvatore, Roger Bird, Regina Telesco, Molly Lasagna. We're going to get your questions, viewers. Start putting them in about 5 or 10 minutes from now, but let's just get this thing kicked off. Richard Rivera says, this is Rex, and I stand with you.
Okay.
Johnny Walden said, hey, Sean, this is Asiatic. Long time no hear.
Wow.
Yeah, man. So let's start with the good news, man. You're the executive director of Hudson Link.
Yes.
And this is a program that, is it specifically in Sing Sing, or it started there and it's branched out? Tell us a little bit about it.
It started at Sing Sing. We coordinate 5 different facilities. Green Correctional Facility, Shawanagung, Sullivan, Sing Sing, and Taconic for the women. We have about 640 men and women currently enrolled in degree granting college work. We have 9 different college partners. And we are giving about 100 degrees a year.
Wow. And what kind of degrees are these?
It's all basically liberal arts, a little bit of business as well.
What are the most desired degrees and or courses that our incarcerated brothers and sisters are interested in? Is there a
Well,
trend?
yeah, well, 86% of the students that go through the program and return back to the community end up in the social services field. So caseworkers, social workers, counselors, and 34% go on to graduate work, mostly in the social services field. So those liberal arts classes and credits and then the degree are really helpful in following that trend.
And so most people are then really just going back to serve the community.
It is really ironic to think that those of us that are formerly incarcerated get sent to prison for hurting our communities, and then 2 decades later or 3 decades later return to that same community, but as helpers.
Tell us. I know you told me this before, and I wanted you to share it with our audience. What they said to you when you were on your way out, and they asked you to be re-involved.
So I was very involved with the launch of the college program. Then I went through it myself, and then afterwards, I ran it for about 18 months before I was released. I only served 16 of my 24-year sentence, so I was let out a little bit early. But when I walked out those gates,
only 16.
There's a big difference between 16 and 24.
Sure. Wow, 16.
So when I left Sing Sing, I had more time in prison than out of prison. And you think about a reentry scenario and rejoining the community, but I didn't really, the last time I was home, I was in the 9th grade in junior high school, living at my mom's house. I'd never written a check. I had never paid rent. I'd never paid taxes. It's not really the same thing. And the folks that were running the college program asked if I would consider joining the board of directors. And for me, it was just a huge honor to play a role with the organization that gave me a second chance at life. And then about a year into being on the board, the current commissioner of corrections, the board chair, and some of the staff had, they said, would you consider taking over as director and going back into the prison to run the program? And I remember thoughtfully thinking about what that meant and physically having to go back into that place. But while I lived there for half my life, I also earned 18 cents an hour for half my life. And I just said to the commissioner, we need to renegotiate my salary. That's the starting point right there.
What was that like, being incarcerated, being inmate number blah, 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 and then coming back and not having the same restraints, not having the same relationships with corrections officers that were still there, wardens and whatnot?
First of all, it's 87B0811, a number you will never, ever forget. I served a lot of time in the bakery, mess hall, pots and pans, food service. And then the last few years at Sing Sing, I was in the maintenance department. So I was always in some kind of service capacity, even while in the prison. And I really got to know the administrators of the prison on a very different level, first as a worker and a maintenance worker, and then as a college student, which to this day, I believe you can't do one or the other. Those things have to be mixed together for when you go home. But I think the piece for me, I always joke about the downside of growing up in prison is you grew up in prison, but the flip side is all your friends are now the wardens. And now this relationship that I have with the Department of Corrections is very unique and, been incredible in helping me launch and grow the program to 5 facilities now.
So let's take a quick peek at that photograph. This is you're 16 years old here.
Yeah.
And,
leaving Suffolk County Jail after being sentenced to 24 years in prison.
And you were in 9 different facilities over 24 years.
I got moved around quite a bit. I had a tough start in my correctional life there, and I got in and out of solitary confinement and moved around, and I lived in 9 different max prisons over 16 years.
What's solitary confinement like? There's the horrors of solitary are described by so many people. You've been through it. Tell us some of the issues with it.
I think the irony is, I was having such a tough time there in a lot of different ways that when I got sent to the box, the first time it was 90 days, and I kind of was excited to go off the grid.
Yeah.
And kind of be safe. I don't know, lack of a better word, just be safe. And it's not a safe place when you're when you go to somewhere where it's devoid of all human contact, 23 hours a day, and then on 1 hour you're out of the cell, you're isolated even during that hour. They would call it recreation, but you're basically almost in like dog pens, but you're outside. So you get to a point in your 90 days where you just stop even taking that hour out of the cell. You just stay in 24 hours a day because it's just really too much work even to just get out. And you literally start to lose daylight hour. It gets really complicated mentally.
Do they I'm sure each stint in solitary is different, but do they provide you with books? Are you allowed any kind of entertainment or things to occupy your time?
Believe it or not, the officers were the saving grace. They would sneak you things like a book, or pass a book from one cell to another. And there's a human contact piece where the officers will help you get through this. It also means that you're okay with the officers. Some of the guys will refuse to take a book or participate in that back and forth, that humanity, because it's black and white, and
Yeah.
that's it.
And speaking of black and white, you're a young white guy, and our disgusting system is predominantly black. I mean, I've been teaching at Rikers Island for 6 years, and I've probably honestly seen a dozen young guy. I teach youth, young guys that are not Latino or black. A dozen over 6 years.
Yeah.
What's it like in the racial situation there?
I think that it's really easy for folks to say, the system has some issues, but it's not broken. But when you're standing in A Block yard in Sing Sing, and there's 400 or 500 people in the yard on any given night, and there's 6 white guys, you don't think about statistics, you don't think about percentages, you don't think about the criminal, but you realize something is seriously broken here.
Yeah.
And there's no other way to look at it. And it's not until you actually walk through that yard or visit one of these facilities that you have just a much deeper grasp of where our system has gone horribly wrong.
And how do you put in perspective the racial makeup of the officers? Like, again, like there's a whole other dynamic there.
Yeah, it's mostly white officers, and it's mostly a black and brown population, and you could take it from there.
Yeah, right. Let's go to a quick question from the chat. Turco Ono, who's one of my favorite audience members. He said, how many tickets did you get in prison? Was it mostly on the front end of your sentence? And did it decline as time went on?
It did. And I will just say, I did not deserve any of the good breaks that I got. And I say that because I was just a young, dumb knucklehead. But in my defense, when I got there, I was 2 inches shorter. I weighed 120 pounds, still had braces on my teeth. Like I was just the whitest, nerdiest guy in the world. And the cell block, A block in Sing Sing is 2 football fields long. And I literally did not see another white guy on that tier. And I didn't deal with that well. And I didn't deal with that well. And it really took a lot of years before the old timers that were there way longer than I was really started pulling me on the side and saying, Sean, it's time to put those ways aside. Like, and the officers many times would be like, is that really what you're going to do right now? And almost in a big brother or even a fatherly nature, these old timers really looked out for me in so many ways, really in a place that I should have never gotten a break.
What can you tell us a little bit about how you feel about the crime that you did commit? How do you feel about it today?
Well, I will just say that I remember getting arrested and just feeling so embarrassed and confused. I had let my family, my community, myself down. And because the guy I shot was accused of hurting his own daughter, I get to the prison and people start like backslapping me and be like, yo, kid, good job. Like I would have done the same thing. And as a teenager facing 24 years in prison, more time than I was alive, I I grasped onto that just literally as a mental piece of stability in a world that was very upside down. And it was a lot of years before I really admitted to myself that I had done a horrible thing that really hurt so many people aside from the person that lost their life. And you can never change or make those things right. And part of the reason I've gotten into this field now, after I left the prison after nearly 2 decades, was I just wanted to dedicate my future and my work and my employment to making things better. I wanted to give back in a positive way. And we can't always do that, but I was in a unique position because of my background to create an organization and build it based on what I had learned inside. And no one else knew those things.
What do you mean by unique position because of your background? What do you mean by your background?
Meaning you grow up in 9 different prisons over nearly 2 decades and you know the system. So if you were deemed right now to take over a college program in a maximum security prison, there's no doubt in my mind you could do it. But it would take you 2 years to get your feet to the ground and make your way and learn the ins and outs. And every single facility is a little bit different and run a little bit different and almost like little fiefdoms. But I knew so many people because I'd been moved around so much that all the folks that I grew up with, those officers and staff were now running the Department of Corrections now. And to be on a first name basis with those folks, just an incredible opportunity to grow the program. You know, when I took it over, there were 66 students, about a $200,000 a year budget, 1 college partner, 1 facility. And now 10 years later, we're in 5 facilities, 640 students, 9 college partners, a $2.4 million budget that we don't receive state and federal funding for. We raise every penny privately every day. And now a brand new construction initiative partnering formerly incarcerated men and women with local contractors to renovate abandoned homes for housing for returning men and women.
I just want to close the chapter on the murder, and that is the father was abusing his daughter consistently. She asked you to help out, and you did. And just so people have an understanding of where or how the crime emerged, I just want to make that clear in case people haven't researched and they don't understand it. It wasn't a robbery. It wasn't a robbery gone wrong. It wasn't something like that.
It was 2 dumb teenagers that didn't think very much.
Had an idea for a solution that wasn't the greatest solution. Yeah.
Yeah.
Back into the chat for a second here. Patrick Henn says, no love for Wallkill. What's Wallkill?
That's one of the prisons.
Another facility. Lisa Mahoney Beck's here. Glenn Klimmelstein's here. Jeff Weber. Jessica Abina is here. Samantha Firestein says, you probably had more education than most of the people at the age of 16, which I think I've seen that you have pointed that out, that was something walking in allowed you to, actually had people gravitate to you, right? People started to come to you.
Yeah. When I got to the first facility, I mean, when you walk in that prison and it's 5 stories high and it's a football field long, it's just the noise and the stink and you're just thinking 24 years, the very first thing they give you is an assessment paper. And that assessment paper literally lists your name, where you're from, the county of indictment, how many days you've already served from your county, and then what your sentence is, and then your date of, literally from the day you walk in there, you have the date of release. And it was Friday the 13th, 2020. And it was just, it takes your breath away. And while I was sitting in that cell, just feeling like there was no future for me at all, how would I possibly survive this? One of the officers came to the cell and asked if I would consider helping some of the other men learn to read and write because I had more education than almost everybody.
And at the beginning, did you say yeah, or did you say no?
I very selfishly said yeah, because we were in our cells 23 hours a day, and this would get me out for an extra hour a day. And also just embarrassingly, as a teenager, to realize that you had never volunteered for any, like there's a big connection between going to prison and realizing that you've never volunteered, you've never given back your entire life up until that point, even though it's 16 years, the entire 16 years was about what you could take.
Yeah.
And there's something to that.
Definitely. Into the chat for a second. Jeff Weber, Jessica Abina Marshall's here. Marcus Barr points out also behavioral science is a major.
Yeah.
Althea Marcus says, my brother.
It's like memory lane here. This is going to be dangerous.
Make sure there's just coffee in that mug.
That's it.
Tara Lynn, Tara Baranek, Nowakowski, Pito Love, Marcus Barr said torture. We were talking about solitary. Some of these comments come in late. Ann Rice is with us. Janelle Salif Plouffe. Tara Baranek says, hey, Sean, you look great. Jessica Marshall is with us. Jessica Abina Marshall.
What's up, guys?
Henry Newsom, Danielle Pica, David Saladino. Somebody said, Pito Love says, Sean, why don't you tell him of the pancakes?
I would make pancakes at the end of the day, and before you know it, like 70, 80 people are eating pancakes. Officers, staff, we would have, Pito and I would have pancake parties, if you could believe it. Incredible.
Victoria Strangerone, Darren Ferguson, Molly Lasagna says, Sean, can you talk about why higher education is a leveler for success?
So when I first got to prison, all of these old timers that surrounded me that just seemed to have so much on the ball were completely uneducated in a formal sense. They knew their way around a prison. They knew the way around the streets. They would do really good time. They would stay out of trouble. But then at the end of their 6, 8, 10 years, they'd go home and 8 months later, they're back. And when I would hear that, I initially thought, how would I be any different than them? Especially since I had never done anything before I went to prison. Now my whole life was in prison. When I walked out, the idea of coming back was so scary. But those old timers made me go to school. And I wish I could sit here and say I was dedicated to make a good use of that negative time. But the fact is, it was only because these older guys that were really taking care of me made me go to school. They made me get my high school diploma. They made me go to pre-college. They made me go to 2-year, 4-year. I left with a master's degree. And when I walked out of that place, I immediately walked into job interviews and especially in the social services field in New York City, so many of the folks that have never been to prison don't have those kinds of credentials. So I quickly started going up the ranks. I worked in 2 or 3 different social services agencies, working for parole, working for small agencies, working for the Department of Corrections, and then was offered this role to go back into the prison. And none of that would have ever been possible if I didn't finish my high school, let alone get college.
Kelly Butler Sardo is with us. Wally Green is with us. Wally's my guest tomorrow night. He's a table tennis pro. He's an amazing cat. Escaped gang neighborhood in Brooklyn, and now is traveling the world as a tennis table pro. Good to see you, Wally. Jamie Leo has a question. Sean, has Hudson Link worked with Strive? And thanks for your important work.
Strive was actually the very first place I worked when I came home. I saw Pito that's in the chat room. I literally had a tool belt on my shoulder walking through East Harlem and doing construction stuff. And I saw Pito in a suit, and don't tell Pito I said this, but the first thing I thought was, what is he up to? Because why is a formerly incarcerated guy in a suit? And when I chatted with him, he said that he worked at this agency called Strive. And when I walked, he said he could set me up with a job interview. When I got there, I met the CEO at the time, Rob Carmona, and sat with him, and he offered me my first job. And I remember him saying, we don't have a really big budget, but we do amazing things here. We could start you at $29.5. And I tried to keep my poker face and not get excited because I earned 18 cents an hour for half my life.
Hour going in your head.
$29,000. And little did I know that's about $200 a week. But meeting those folks at Strive, which after that I shot something with 48 hours there. I've always stayed connected, even after I left there about a year later to go to grad school and get my master's in social work. But that year there with them changed the entire direction of my future.
You know about GOSO? I've been doing teaching with GOSO.
Yeah.
GOSO is brilliant. For those of you who are watching, GOSO NYC, Getting Out, Staying Out. Great guy.
Incredible stuff.
Right? And a great guy who started that whole organization. You know, he went to Rikers 10, 15 years ago for somebody said, why don't you come in and just do like business leader for an hour? And he begrudgingly, he went. He's retired. And he stayed for 12 hours.
He's an incredible guy.
So let's see. Here's another really important question coming out of chat. Ann Rice wants to know, who cut your hair, man? You look good, she said.
I actually have one of the Hudson Link students has actually been staying with me during COVID, and thankfully, not only is he a longtime friend, but he's also a barber. So I've been really lucky to get
You're
regular
like
haircuts.
one of few people that's got a barber quarantine with you. You lucky guy. Kelly Butler Sardo's with us. Scooter Milvey is with us. Good to see you guys. Sean McDowell, Lori Mazzola, Neil Schweitzer. All right, so Jolene Festa has a question. How did you deal with the time away from society, the arrested development, the transition back in society? I see a lot of guys who don't do well with it.
I think when I talk somewhere and I say that I was 16 and 120 pounds and went to a max security prison, folks just assume that that story is going to end horribly wrong. But I think because I was so young, like my friends were getting ready to graduate with their proms, and I was, sentenced to 24 years in prison. But those same friends, many of the folks that are in this chat room right now, continue to write and correspond and send me notes and come to visit me. And that connection, that human connection, even though you're away, because you just assume you're sentenced to 24 years, you're done. Like people are going to stop visiting. And I mean, those letters, and an interesting thing would happen too. I would get like literally bunches of letters from my friends that were still in high school, and I would read them and then I would pass them on to the other men. And if you think about just correspondence and mail and that human contact, as I said, A block in Sing Sing, it's 2 football fields long. It's the single largest cell block in the country. So you can't see the end of it. And every day at dinner time, the officer would lock all the gates and then walk the gallery and hand out the mail. And he would literally have 4 or 5 pieces of mail for 2 football fields. So to sit there and wait and have him walk by you was just such a painful, hurtful experience in a hurtful place that all of a sudden you're just passing out this mail, and it was like I was Santa Claus. It was crazy.
So they were reading the love correspondence, the interesting questions, and they were vibing off of that second degree of right. Amazing.
I'm actually right in the middle right now of creating partnerships with 7 different churches and synagogues that are local that want to do something positive during this pandemic. And I've literally just been working with the student rosters of the 640 students. So everybody's just getting ongoing mail.
Can you tell us where our viewers can get in contact with you for that?
Yeah, www.hudsonlink.org. That's the website, and my email is on that website. Let me know if you want to participate. That would be fantastic.
We were talking about what can people do if they're not already ensconced in something, because there's this new awareness of what can I do. This is a perfect opportunity, everybody. We talked about it at the top of the show to make a difference. We got a couple questions, but it's 10:30. That means our show is over. This is only a half-hour show, unless you agree to do a little bit more and our chatters are with it.
This is my last call of the day. I'm cool. I can stay with you a little longer.
All right, great. Well, in order to do that, we play a game called 5 Objects. I'm quarantined like everybody else. I've been locked down. I've been noticing things in my house that I didn't know I had. Why do I still have?
I'm super scared right now.
You're scared? Don't be scared. I'm just like wondering, why do I still have these things? Or, oh, thank God I do have these things. So I'm going to just show you 5 objects, and you just respond very quickly, briefly, what it means or feels for you.
All right, I'm with you.
Some of them, who knows what they are. All right, let's start with this one. This one, a bird feeder.
Oh my goodness. Well, while I was at Sing Sing, I would take these scraps of old pallets, and me and the guys would spend days sanding them down and making bird feeders and little jewelry boxes out of them, and then selling them to the other men that we lived with. And even some of the officers would buy them. And to this day, I see those things in my family members' houses, and it just brings me right back to that place.
Incredible. All right, a VHS tape.
So I was really involved with the weightlifting and powerlifting. While I was inside, I really grasped onto it. I had so many problems with addictions as a kid that I finally became drug-free, and instead I picked up weightlifting. And I ended up being top 10 in the state 2 years in a row. And the guy in charge of all the recreation filmed on a VHS me lifting, and and sent it to me after I went home. And to watch that VHS, finding a place to watch a VHS, but watching that footage of me while I was still incarcerated lifting was a pretty emotional thing, but it just was incredible. I never watched it a second time. I watched it one time, and that was it.
What year were you released?
'02.
Okay.
Friday the 13th, '02.
Number 3, a clothespin.
So every one of the cells is pretty much identical in the whole prison system, and the officers would allow you to hang a curtain if you were using the toilet or getting ready for bed or whatever. So we didn't have clothespin, but we would make something that would look like a clothespin with rubber bands, and we would hang the curtains up so we could have privacy.
A toy tank.
Wow. There's not a lot of my life that brings me to a connection to a toy tank.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't have anything on that one.
Here's number 5.
So one of the things I did in high school was work for a local guy as a carpenter. And I was 15. I had no idea what I was doing. The guy was just an amazing guy, Matt Fasone. And after when I went to prison and you go away, you just expect that no one's ever going to reach out to you. And I remember he called, I called and talked to him, and he said, "Hey, I want to come up and visit with my wife. Do you still like Snickers?" I said, "Oh, it's my favorite thing." Okay. So when he got there, he literally brought me about 100 pounds of Snicker bars. I left that visit room with a big net bag filled with a ton of Snicker bars.
Were you dealing Snickers for the next 3 months?
It was, yeah, I was very popular.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right, couple questions out of the chat here. Lori Mazzola showed up. Neil Schweitzer's with us. Let's see. And we're going to get to your questions, people. Prince Mapp is with us.
Prince, what's up?
Nimu Hamilton's with us. Turko Ono has another question. Have you received a pardon? Do you think you'll ever get a pardon? Would you even seek a pardon?
I'm not innocent. I went to jail for doing some really dumb stuff, for being a really dumb teenager and making some really poor choices. There's no part of that I ever want to forget about or ask to be relieved of. The fact is, when you start forgetting about your past, you make poor decisions in the future. I know that. I have to keep that past so I keep a better future.
You are a true man, true gentleman. Carol Miller's with us. Tom T-Bird Burnett is with us. Becky Savelle's got a question. You kind of answered it, but let's see if you can come up with another short answer here. What was the turning point for you after not seeing the point of the future way back then to be inspired to learn?
As the director of a college program, I know I'm supposed to say something about education, but the fact is, I was in and out of solitary those first few years. I was making some really poor choices. I was getting high any chance I could get to forget about the place I was in. And there was a guy in Great Meadow, which is a disciplinary jail, that came up to me. His name was Big Al. I don't have to describe anything more about Big Al. He was fucking huge. And he pulled me on the side one day and he said, I don't know if you know it, but we have teenagers that come into the prison for a youth program once a month. And all the guys that are on this team that the officers let speak to these teenagers are their father's age. And you're, Sean, actually their age. And, we'd love to have you involved. And I remember looking up to Big Al and saying, I can't even help myself. How would I possibly help? For me, I had nothing to offer. And I said to him, I can't help. And he said, "Oh my God, Sean, I'm so sorry. I wasn't asking. It starts Monday at 6, and you have to, and oh, right. Gotcha. Oh, I'll see you Monday. And I show up because Big Al told me to show up.
Yeah.
And as I walked into this room with these teenagers from a local high school, they asked me to talk about my family. And a lot of us that think about prison don't think about the fact that your whole family goes with you. Your friends, your family, your neighbor, all those folks go to prison with you. And I remember by the time I was done, everyone in that room, the officers, the staff, the students, the other guys that were on the group, every one of us was just crying. And I thought to myself, I can't remember the last time I cried. And I walked out of there and the officer hugged me. And he said, "Man, that was brilliant. You got to make these kids cry every month." And it was not the point, of course. But for me, it was the first point in my life. I was probably 19 where I thought, maybe my life isn't over.
Maybe my life isn't
over.
isn't over. Excellent. You got me taking my breath away, man. Amy Alt says, this is maybe a strange question, but is there anything you miss about being in prison?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yes, the answer is absolutely yes. The camaraderie, the brotherhood, breaking bread with guys every day. I mean, for me, I was raised by so many of these men that made me go to school, that made me not get high, that made me work out and take care of my body. And a lot of those men never went home. So now when I go back into these prisons as a job, to see those men, at first I just thought they would be resentful, but it has been the complete opposite. They're living through the achievements and the things that I'm doing. And it's just been a moment where they all claim my success, which is wonderful. But, you know, so many of them mentored me and kept me alive, that, you know, it's an honor to be able to do this job, but it's also really cool to know that the guys that got me where I am feel committed to that.
I don't want to put a pin in the balloon, but is there a population, a percentage of guys that are still saying, F you?
No.
That's great. That's great to hear. That's beautiful. All right, let's go to some more questions. How is college structured in prison is a question we have. And I'm going to, while you talk about it, I'm going to show some more great photos of these graduates and whatnot. How is college structured in prison?
So the very easy answer to that is, if you look at a prison educational program and it's not identical to what's being offered on a traditional campus, then it's not right. The courses, the textbooks, the professors, the schedule, everything is exactly the same. If anything, the professors have said to me, they have to prepare more work, because when they go to a traditional campus, the students just don't keep up. And I mean, we have a class after class with students that are all 4.0, amazing students. But all of this is based on the fact of 20 years of tweaking and growing this program, where we know that our students thrive in a condition where it's face-to-face, in-person teaching. So right now during COVID, when colleges across the country, not just prison programs, have literally closed all their campuses and they've moved all their students to online learning, those same students, even the ones that aren't in prison, are really struggling right now. And for our prisons, we don't even have the internet. We don't even have the capability of doing online learning. So we're really in a tough spot right now.
Yeah, right now, you know, I'm contracted at Rikers, and we just started to do creating packets. So we're creating 2-hour packets of learning.
Yeah, that's what we're doing right now.
Right? And so I'm delivering these every day to the to my contact at Rikers, and then it's being distributed to the kids. This is a beautiful photograph. Tell us about that feeling at these graduations, that pride, that energy and joy.
So this graduate, Michael, was just one of those guys that wasn't sure he wanted to go to school, didn't think he wanted to waste his time with that. It's not really going to help him. And then 4 years later, he's the valedictorian getting his bachelor's degree. And that valedictorian speech, he literally turned away from the audience to his young daughter in the audience and just spoke to her. And just one of the most moving, incredible graduation speeches you will ever hear. And he's now actually in the graduate degree program at Sing Sing.
Amazing.
Working on his master's degree.
Is the general public allowed to come to these graduations, or is it only for family? No, you can. So you don't have to be family.
No. We have 300-400 people at these graduations and amazing keynote speakers. We've had Julian Bond, Harry Belafonte, Tim Robbins, Ice-T, Warren and Doris Buffett, Mark Holden from Coke Industries. I mean, just incredible folks coming.
Were you present for the Ice-T TED Talk at Sing Sing?
I coordinated it.
It is, oh my God, that is phenomenal. I watched it again the other night. For everybody out there, go Google Ice-T Sing Sing.
And Jonathan Demme directed and produced it for us.
It was unbelievable. I cried watching it. I laughed watching it. And I learned. Thank goodness, right? Another graduate. It's really good stuff. Elation in the classroom. Love it. Love it. All right, so we got to go to chat because the questions are piling up. Can you talk more about the construction project? Ann Rice wants to know, especially in the economy now, providing jobs is so important. And Jorge Estacio says, love you, Sean.
Thank you. Love you, man. So when I was asked to do a capstone for my bachelor's degree for Hudson Link as I was getting ready to graduate, um, what the hell was I going to write about? I was 16 when I went away. Now I've been in prison for 14 years, and I'm supposed to write a research project. So I wrote about what I knew. And since I'd been in the maintenance department at Sing Sing, keeping a 200-year-old building, running daily, I wrote about taking dilapidated homes in impoverished communities and using our students to rehab them as a flip model. And when Doris Buffett bought us our headquarters building in 2015, me and a bunch of the guys moved all the stuff from the place we were renting to the new headquarters. And I found that file box with the original 16 students' research projects. Mine was in there. And I opened it up, and I literally didn't even remember. I mean, I'd written it 16 years earlier on a manual typewriter while living at Sing Sing. And I find this research paper, and I thought, oh, wow, this could be relevant now. And I literally went to the back page, crossed off the word flip, and wrote in transitional housing. A local funder bought us the first house. It was abandoned for 7 years. It was right behind the prison. And other local funders paid for construction, some paid for labor costs. But the whole deal was our men and women that are now home would partner with local contractors and rebuild and create a home that other students would then come to. So it's linking the students that are home with the students that are still inside in a way that just fosters a community bond. But it's a beautiful home. The first one is done. The doors are open. The second one, we're literally waiting for building permits now, which will be dedicated to women. And somebody just offered me a third house.
That's great. Again, going back to my viewers who are questioning, what can I do to help? In every pretty suburb, just around the corner, there's a cute little prison tucked away, or there's a cute little jail tucked away. If you go up to Hudson County and you want to go fishing or boating, you're passing 4 or 5 prisons for kids and adults. So no matter where you are, do some research, find out. And these are great programs that you can pitch in and offer whatever your skill set is, whatever it is. You don't have to be a construction worker. You can be that. You can be a designer. You can be a proofreader for the documents. It doesn't matter. I'm really about this right now, Sean. I mean, I've always been about.
And even some of the time, I moved around quite a bit, but I would get involved with these programs like AVP, the college, the church programming, the AA meetings, not because I wanted to deal with AA, but because I wanted outside contact. So you might not be a professor, you might not be able to write a big fat check to help run a program, but you could go and visit and give a voice and be involved. And every one of these prisons needs volunteers.
Every one of them. All right. Jessica Albina says, and I was your first favorite group co-facilitator.
I love it. Yes. And you're still my favorite.
Prince Map says, Hudson saved my life. Wow. Lori Mazzola, his amazing wife.
Yes. Love you, babe.
Mike Terrell joined us. Lauren Wolf's with us. Neil Schweitzer says, looking good, Sean. Eric Persuad, Dawn Perky, Lisa Byers, Ettinger's with us. Prince Map says, why didn't you give up on us, Sean? Pataki wanted to shut us down. Why didn't you give up on us?
I wish I could say all these amazing things about how determined I was, but the fact is I had been given so much for so long as a young guy that as I got older, it was just ingrained organically, I think, in me that we would continue giving back. It was just people don't hear about the amazing men and women inside. We have this picture of what the face of corrections looks like, but the fact is this young white kid, the nerdiest white guy with glasses in the world, was taken care of. And, that's not the story you hear about.
Yeah.
And I'm not recommending that anyone goes to prison to grow up, but the fact is that story should have ended very differently.
Yep. Jolene Festa's with us. Marcus Barr is with us. Eric Dubert, Bill Luke, Camille Tedesco Malanasi. How did you feel the first time we already talked about this, Lori, and just in the interest of getting to more questions, you can go back and look at the archive. We'll be here on Facebook and on YouTube. But she asked, how did you feel the first time you re-entered the prison as a free man? Joseph Satile, Jess Robustelli, Lori Mazzola, again, published on the Hudson Link website. All the information is there. Camille says, doing great things. Cecily Benjamin Hughes is with us. Patty Curry, Mary Ramos, Kenyatta Hughes, Nemu Hamilton wants to know, can you speak about the services men and women receive after prison and how the support continues? And again, for viewers looking for things to do to better our world, this is probably going to illuminate some more ideas for you.
Kanemo just wants me to say that he was in the first graduating class. That was just a plug. He doesn't want to know anything about reentry.
All right, next question.
No, I'm teasing. Kanemo, thank you. I think that, well, number one, I will say, as someone that went through the reentry process, but now works in an organization that does reentry, I'm realizing firsthand that the women have a 10 times harder challenge in their reentry work. And I don't know all the reasons for that, but it is clearly much harder for the women in their reentry. All of us, though, are challenged in so many different ways, which is one of the reasons why when I first took over as the director of Hudson Link and had no idea what I was doing, I started measuring our growth by how many facilities and how many students we served. As of last year, we actually reduced the size of the program, went from 6 facilities to 5, but grew the number of students, but we're going much deeper with services. So that not only are we doing pre-college remedial work, 2-year, 4-year programming, but we're also starting the reentry component with a new dedicated reentry specialist before they walk out. So that when that person walks out, and we know a safe bed is the single biggest indicator to a successful transition, not college, but the college is the vehicle that's getting you to these other places. So we have business attire. We have 10 racks of business clothes in the alumni quarters. We have a laptop for every single student. Since 34% go back to grad school, they need a machine to work on. We have every other month networking dinners. And it's a fancy way of saying we have pizza down in the city, but it works. Some of our students like Pito are home 20 years. Some are home 20 days. So when someone walks in, Pito says, where's your resume? I've worked in 5 agencies. Let me plug you in. And it's just been an incredible networking opportunity for everybody involved. And guys are getting jobs 4 or 5 weeks out of prison. That's against every norm. And it's also why the recidivism of the organization is now less than 1%.
That's great. All right, we're coming closer toward an ending point here. We could go on all night. Daquan proves
it just means you have to invite me back.
I'd love to. What I'm going to do is put together a little round table. We'll put you and Jamal Joseph and a couple other folks together. And
that would be incredible.
Bring Rudolph Giuliani into that round table too, so we can all watch his head explode. Tai Chi Salam's with us. Clarence Green's with us. Heather Prescott has a question. Are you currently involved in autodidactic education? Perhaps an educational platform that incorporates education for inmates where incarcerated prisoners can incorporate as rehabilitation?
We don't. We are literally mirroring liberal arts face-to-face learning. That's and quite frankly, most of these questions are very easily answered with, we don't have the money. We don't receive any state or federal funding. We raise every penny privately, and we pay every single professor the same rate as what they would get on a traditional campus, because the last thing we need is us telling our students, oh yeah, it's college, but we're using volunteers. The implications are serious. So they have to know that it's the same professor, the same textbook, and the same salary as they would get on a traditional campus. And I mean, the GPAs show that. It's a reflection of that.
Carol Miller says, it's not over till it's over. Agree. Becky Savell says, so amazing. Thank you. Cindy Hernandez is with us. Maria Velasquez is with us. Barry Gecko has a question. She says, I have a grandkid just graduated from kid jail to grown-up jail. He's got the swastika on his forehead. He's lost the way on education as a way out. Is there something you could advise on how to help some of the blind ones?
He has to be plugged into folks like me that have been through it, that have walked the walk. And I mean, I've talked to so many of the, I joke about growing up with the staff that are now running these facilities, but I get phone calls from current wardens that say, hey, you got to come up and talk to my kids. And it really works. We see an impact. 70% of the Hudson Link staff are formerly incarcerated. The folks that sat in those seats now coordinate those programs, and it speaks volumes to these young guys. And I don't know how else to say it. They get it.
When I speak to my young guys, I let them know. A lot of them are like, what use am I? They're like, I've got this history now. I'm going to be in here for 3, 5, 10 years. And I'm like, well, guess what? When you leave here, you've got these years as experience. Nobody's better suited to speak to the problems than someone like you who's been through this. So instead of wasted years, these are actually part of your portfolio, you know.
Yeah.
And
My favorite moment is when one of the young guys stops me in the hall at Sing Sing or at Green and says, "Oh, Mr. Pica, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but you know, if you could do it, I can do it." And I'm like, "No, that's the whole point, you know."
That's hilarious. Callie Greenberg saying lots of love to you and your family.
Thank you. Thank you.
Turco Ono has a question. We're not gonna get to all the questions, guys, because we gotta finish up soon. I don't want to drain Sean of every ounce of energy he's got. Let's see. Okay, so I work with literacy for incarcerated teens. So this is related to my work. What is the totality of the library in most prisons? How do professors teach the materials? So you've already explained that the professors are online, on par with any professional out there. Talk about the libraries.
And I say this out of love, they're packed with Louis L'Amour's, and I mean, it's not, I love Louis L'Amour, but when that's the extent of your library, there's not a whole lot of reading stuff.
I'm ignorant. Louis L'Amour is...
Oh my goodness, it's the Westerns, man.
Okay.
All right, you got to check them out. They're amazing. But anyway, if that's the only extent of your reading material, you know, you're not going to find solace in the prison library. But what we've done is we've gotten space from the prison, and we've built our own libraries and resources, materials, computer labs in every site. And even though there's not the internet, there are capacities to research through the networks that we bring in.
Got it. Brian Rancancio just joined us. Jess Zano, my good friend, how are you? Long time no see. Turco Ono says, always great to see a success story. We need more. Hang in there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Barry Gecko Sakamano, who you answered the question about her grandkid, said mahalo. She's in Hawaii, by the way.
All right. Tell her to email me.
I will. Barry, email him.
Yes.
In case you didn't understand what he just said. Now's the time for audience to drop your thanks, your kudos into the chat, and I'll read them back as we get into the final stretch here. Michelle Bastian Archer's with us. Clarence Green, my field is environmental law. What are the opportunities available for me to practice my skill set? I don't know. We don't know.
Yeah, I don't know on that one.
That's an email question.
Yeah.
Lori Mazzola says, asks, how supportive is the general population of college and prison and the Hudson Link students? Lori, it's in the back of this episode. We've already talked about it, and just in the interest of moving on, thank you. Samantha Firestein says, books or weapons. Agreed. So what, I have a question about what's going on right now. There's two things going on in the world. There's this pandemic with the lockdown, and then there's this terrible murder, not a tragedy, because I feel like tragedy is too general. Murder of George Floyd, right? So tell us about what's going on in Sing Sing and these prisons. Well, Sing Sing, because you're there now. How are you guys handling the pandemic? How's the population dealing with the quarantines, the lockdowns, and all of the ideas of germ spreading? I know at Rikers, there was nothing being done. There was no acknowledgement of it whatsoever. What's it like at Sing Sing?
So one of the initial things that happened was we retreated our staff before we had to, because we knew at that point the prisons had no positive cases. So we were the threat. So we figured out a way to get in as much schoolwork as possible during those last few days. And then on March 13th, it was the last day that we were in there. At that point, each facility has a DEPA programs that administratively allowed us to get work in and out to our students, but also to stay engaged with our students. And even though we're staying engaged with just the college students, it's 10% of the population or more. So it had a ripple effect to the entire population. As those positive cases started to trickle in, some of the officers got sick, some of the men and women got sick. It was a really trying time. It still is a really trying time. But the fact is, I've been so impressed with the way the men and women that live in these facilities have supported each other. Because not only was our staff and the staff of the prison not allowed in anymore, that you only have essential staff and officers allowed in, that their families aren't allowed to visit since March 13th. So all of a sudden, they're completely isolated, they're completely alone, but they didn't give up on themselves. Those men and women are supporting each other. The stories that I'm hearing about sharing food and resources and just decks of cards, like just whatever it takes to survive this moment. And I will just say, I was there during 9/11. And I remember the phone system stopped working. The officers knew less than we did. All we watched was the news 24 hours a day. So even though these men and women can watch the news, it really doesn't help. You're not any more connected by watching the news on a daily basis. So they need these messages from family, from friends, from loved ones to keep them alive. So if you're out there, if you have a loved one or a friend inside, write them a letter. The mail system has been kept running. They've kept it a priority to have that access to the students, to the men and women in the system. Keep writing them.
There is an organization called Prison Rights, WRITES, and you can actually, again, you can become a pen pal with a prisoner. And
it's life-changing work.
What about this with George Floyd? What have you noticed about, but actually, before we go there, do you have a date on when they're going to let you back in yet? Do you know yet?
No,
okay.
We don't. At this point now, we know we salvaged the spring semester. The summer semester is now not going to happen. We're really hopeful that we have a fall semester. That's where we're at.
And what's the general vibe in the space now with this murder of George Floyd and obviously watching TV, they're seeing the news.
I think that the theme is change. It's not anger. It's not payback. It's this is our moment to change. And I think that when you have that kind of positive message coming through a super negative situation, I mean, I wish I could say we've never seen something like this before, but the fact is our population didn't carry video cameras before. So we just never captured this work before. And quite frankly, even with people witnessing a knee on a neck as this man died, if it wasn't videotaped, we would be in a completely different argument right now. Those officers would not be in prison, but now they can't even refute it. You killed a man with your knee while he begged for his life. And I mean, the fact is, everybody carries a video camera. It's incredible.
Our friend Jamal Joseph said that the cameras are now the gun. You don't need a gun. You got the camera.
Yeah. I did watch the other night. I was watching the news, and after 3 or 4 days of seeing the looting alongside of the protesting, it was just mixed emotions of, victimizing the same folks that were waiting for their stores to, it just seemed like such a sad moment. I saw a young Black woman jump in front of 4 looters that were breaking down some glass, and they threw her out of the way, and she crawled right back up and just the courage, they dispersed after that. They didn't break into that store. And I thought just the courage of that young woman that said, we're not here to loot stores. We're here to make a statement, to protest not peacefully, and to say that this is our moment to change, not just this situation, but the country. Like, that's what we need. We need that courage to stand in front of those folks.
If you can answer this kind of quickly, Martine Curto wants to know, thought of you and the app program all the time.
Hey, Martine.
How's the group holding up, she asks.
The guys are good. I'm just so proud of how these men and women have stayed so positive in the midst of the worst crisis we've ever seen. I'm proud of them. I'm proud of the officers and the staff for giving them the flexibility to figure out how to support each other. A lot of times if you follow the letter of the law and that rule book, it's very inhumane, and they've been so flexible.
All right. She also adds, so proud of you. It's been over 20 years. You've always stood up for what was right. Huge impact on my students and my own kids. It's beautiful. Very important question I ask every, Clarence Green says, I need a certified copy of my college transcript to He's getting business done. I love it.
I'll follow up.
This is a really important question I ask all of my guests on every show on a Zoom call. We're on a Zoom call. Are you wearing pants?
I do. I have nothing on my feet, though. I'm completely barefoot. I'm wearing pants, though.
All right, great. So here's some more kudos and shout outs, and then I'm going to get to my very, very last question. Oh, actually, we do need to show everybody a little a half-hour documentary that John Fugelsang made called First Degree. And I have brought this into Rikers. I brought it upstate in Hudson to Brookwood and Brentwood. I brought it out to Long Island and to Columbia. And it's phenomenal. It's 29 minutes long. and it just basically covers and talks about your work and the program. And I advise everybody to look for it online. First degree.
And that student that's highlighted, Jermaine, that's highlighted in that movie, is literally up for parole right now after 20 plus years. He's an amazing student, incredible man, a dear friend, and we're really excited that he will be coming home shortly. But
Great.
There's also other movies. There's PBS First Degree. There's an HBO movie, University of Sing Sing. There's a Moxie Pictures. I'm forgetting the name of Moxie Pictures, but there's several different. Go on the website, www.hudsonlink.org. There's a bunch of documentaries, and we've been filming this construction project for the past year, so we'll look out for the next movie.
Great. David Kraft joined us. Sean Gallagher's with us. Becky Savell says, love, love, love. Don't ever give up on a fellow soul. Scott Milway says, great show. Thank you both. Amy All, amazing story. Thank you for sharing. The comments are warming my heart, says Callie Greenberg. This is our moment to change. All right, so my final question, and Maria Velasquez says, free Jermaine Archer. My last question is, for our audience, what's your call to action? Give us a call to action.
The next time you talk to someone and you find out that they're formerly incarcerated, hear them out. I cannot tell you how many folks, as I openly talked in interviews, in employment scenarios, in just people on the subway, and I would say that I just came home from prison, and you could see them just, they shut down. Let us change the face of corrections. We are an asset to these communities. We've made some poor choices. We've all made poor choices. Let us come back to the community in a way that benefits the community in a positive way. We are an asset. Look at what we've done. It's the who's who of the social services field in New York City. And these college students have so much to offer. Give us a shot.
Beautiful. Sean, thanks, man. Definitely going to have you back on again. I really appreciate you doing this.
Thank you so much, Sean.
It's so good to connect with you, brother. Have a great night and enjoy the coffee into the midnight hour here.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Good night.